Boxing Truth here. Wanted to talk a little bit about Felix Verdejo, who's inching towards his first world title shot, as WBO has recently ordered a fight between Terry Flanagan, champion WBO, and Felix Verdejo, who's a #1 contender. Felix Verdejo is coming off pedestrian-type performances. He hasn't had a big-time performance in a while. He's been getting fed some soft touches on the HBO platform and has failed to deliver. Can't even knock out hand-picked opponents or tomato cans, and has not exactly thrilled a lot of fans in his past few performances. But Verdejo is an Olympian. He has some talent. He's shown some explosive performances in the start of his professional career. He recently suffered a hand injury a few fights back, and perhaps that has affected some of his performances. But as long as he can get some of his old form back, start showing some of those knockouts again, there's a lot of upside for Felix Verdejo. He's got the backing of Top Rank, the backing of HBO. He's got a fan base in New York and Puerto Rico. So all he has to do is remind the fans how explosive he can be. And he's failed to do that in some of his past few performances, especially since he's gotten to the HBO platform. But for this fight against Terry Flanagan, it's a very winnable fight for Verdejo. Flanagan is I guess you could say, a paper champion who's pretty much had a mediocre reign thus far. Hasn't beaten any quality opponents, contenders, ever since he won the vacant strap for the WBO. And Terry Flanagan and his team, Frank Warren, are trying to decide what's next for him, as he's gotten some soft touches in his first 2 title defenses, and now they're pondering whether they should go ahead on a unification fight, a very dangerous fight against WBC champion Dejan, the Montenegro fighter. My bad, I can't pronounce his last name. But it's not a fight that's a huge money fight, even despite being a unification. Dejan is a Montenegro fighter. Not much of a fan base in the U.S. Flanagan is not the biggest name in the UK, so where will that fight take place for it to make the most money? Most likely the UK, but according to Eddie Hearn, there's not many people tuning in to watch Terry Flanagan box, so is it really worth losing his title in a very dangerous fight against Dejan, who is a little beast, who's coming off some knockout performances? And Terry Flanagan should feel insulted, because he's been getting called out by some name fighters, and not because he's the money guy in the division. It's because he's viewed as the weakest link of the lightweight champions. They don't see him as a threat. They see him as a paper champion that could easily have his belt taken away from him. Mikey Garcia is gunning for Terry Flanagan. Top Rank and Verdejo have positioned themselves to the #1 ranking for the WBO for a reason. Terry Flanagan is not the strongest lightweight champion out there. Well, when it comes to the eye test, and also when you compare the champion's abilities, all the lightweight champions' abilities. So, Flanagan and Frank Warren may opt to fight a up-and-coming rising star in Verdejo, as the Bobfather, Bob Arum, will probably make an offer to Frank Warren he can't refuse. To have Flanagan come to the U.S. to fight Verdejo, perhaps in the U.S. on the HBO platform, and most likely Frank Warren and Flanagan can get a more lucrative offer to fight Verdejo instead of a unification fight against Dejan, which is a very dangerous fight that Flanagan could very well lose. But this fight is a more winnable fight for Flanagan. Verdejo is coming off some pedestrian-type performances. He hasn't looked good in a while. He had a stoppage win in his last fight, Verdejo did, but he didn't really have the most explosive type stoppage. It was kind of a weak stoppage. But it's a very winnable fight for both guys. I still view Verdejo as the favorite, even though I've been shitting on him lately because he hasn't thrilled me in quite some time. But I still view Verdejo as the guy with a little more talent, a guy who's a little faster, more sharper with his punches, better boxing fundamentals, more explosive, a little more power, better footwork. I just think he does everything a little better than Terry Flanagan. Flanagan, he's a decent fighter, but just nothing special. He's pretty average. And he didn't look all that good against a 42-year-old Manzanki Fana. But y'all let me know what y'all think. Should Flanagan take this fight against Verdejo, which is a more winnable fight? Or should he go in a unification fight, which is a much tougher fight? A guy who was looking like a beast in Dejan and knocking guys out? Or should he take on a young pup in Verdejo who is still developing and not looking as explosive as compared to a Dejan? But it'll be tough for Flanagan if he comes to the U.S. to fight Verdejo to get a decision. That is the downside to that fight. But I see that fight happening. I could see Frank Warren opting to take the fight with Verdejo for Flanagan instead of a unification for Dejan, simply because it'll be a better opportunity for Flanagan, more exposure, some U.S. television exposure, perhaps a more lucrative offer, and a much more winnable fight, let's be honest. But I still favor Verdejo to win the fight. I still think he has the ability to reach his old form, to get back to where he was having these type of explosive performances. I haven't given up on Verdejo just yet. He's still very young. He's definitely not a Trinidad, but everyone's different. Everyone develops differently. Everyone takes a little longer to reach their peak. But it's a fight Top Rank should definitely gun for. They should roll the dice. I can definitely see Verdejo beating Flanagan. He can pick up that strap, make a couple of defenses, get a little more experience, and then go after a unification fight. And a more lucrative fight out there when Verdejo is a little more experienced, a little more seasoned. And as for Bob Arum, he's still not talking to the media, which is a sad thing in the sport right now. I mean, his interviews are awesome, the most entertaining out there. I don't expect his blackout to the boxing media to last very long. I mean, Arum just has a hard time keeping his mouth shut. But I definitely see this fight going down sometime later this year, and it could very well be Felix Verdejo regaining his first strap. In the lightweight division, and perhaps a new rising champion from the island that can maybe not, but maybe somewhat get close to what Felix Trinidad did during his days, or maybe even a Miguel Cotto. Verdejo definitely has the ability. He just hasn't shown it in his past few fights for whatever reason. But we'll see what's next for Verdejo. Hopefully he has a better outing, more explosive performance. Maybe the hand is all healed up. And then finally we can see he can remind us the type of talent he really has, and if maybe is he the future star in Top Rank stable. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.